So if you're in the academic world, you know the deal. The pressure is always on to make your mark. But in a world that screams, publish or perish, how do you actually do that? Well, today we're going to break down author impact, what it is, how it's measured, and most importantly, the actual strategies you can use to boost it. Let's jump in.
Ah, yes. Publish or perish. We've all heard this phrase, right? It's pretty much the mantra for a lot of researchers. It really just boils down to this intense pressure to constantly be publishing your work just to stay relevant, to keep your job, to advance your career. It can feel like it's just a numbers game, but believe me, it's a lot more nuanced than that.
And that leads us right to the big question. Okay, if publishing is just the baseline, what's the next level? How do universities and funders and even your own colleagues figure out the real impact of your work? Beyond just counting up your papers. Let's find out.
Right. It is so much more than just quantity. Your scholarly impact is really a mix of how much you publish and how much that work actually influences the conversation in your field. So how in the world is that influence actually quantified?
Okay, so the first key metric you need to know is the H-index. The best way to think about it is as a balance between your productivity and your consistent impact. So for example, to get an H-index of 10, you need to have published at least 10 papers that have each been cited at least 10 times. It's a really great measure of your steady, cumulative contribution over time.
But then we have the G-index. Now this metric is a little different. It's designed to find your superstar papers. It gives a lot more weight to your most highly cited articles. So if you've got a couple of papers that have just gone totally viral in your field, the G-index is what's going to reflect that massive high-end impact, even if your other papers don't have as many citations.
Okay, so we've got these two different metrics, H-index and G-index. But what does that actually look like for a real researcher? I mean, how can they tell such different stories about someone's career? Let's look at a super clear example.
Okay, take a look at this. We've got two authors. Both have published 10 papers, and both have the exact same H-index of 6. Now, based on that metric alone, they look totally identical. But look at the G-index. Author 1 has a G-index of 10, while author 2 is only at 7. This tells us a completely different story. Author 1's top papers are cited way more heavily, which signals a much greater overall impact. See the difference?
All right, so knowing how your impact is measured is one thing, but the crucial part, the part you're probably here for, is what can you actually do about it? Let's get into the practical playbook. We're going to cover 13 actionable strategies you can literally start using today.
That's right, 13. And these aren't just vague ideas, okay? These are specific, concrete tactics to get your work seen, cited, and recognized. And to make them really easy to remember, we've grouped them into a simple 3-part strategy.
Here's the framework. First, we're going to look at your publication strategy. That's all about where and what you publish. Second, we'll cover your network and collaborations. That's who you work with. And third, we'll talk about your professional profile and service, which is all about how you build your reputation in the field.
Okay, part 1, publication strategy. A huge move is publishing in open access journals. Why? Because it gets rid of paywalls, making your work available to literally everyone. Another smart tactic? Use simple, general titles. Think like a search engine. Make it easy for people to find your papers. And of course, you want to target those top-tier Q1 and Q2 journals to get your work in front of a big, influential audience. And a fantastic long-term play is writing review papers. They often become the go-to resources in a field and just get cited for years and years.
Now for part 2, your network. Look, don't just publish your paper and hope for the best. You got to actively promote it on platforms like LinkedIn or ResearchGate. Another great strategy is working with more co-authors. This expands the network of people who are actually invested in seeing that paper succeed. Collaborating with senior researchers, that can lend both credibility and a ton of visibility to your work. And of course, getting out there and giving talks gets your ideas directly in front of your peers and starts a real conversation.
And finally, part 3, all about your professional profile. Serving as a reviewer or an editor puts you right at the center of the academic conversation in your field. And yes, thoughtful self-citation, when it's genuinely relevant, is important for connecting your whole body of work. For those really looking to make a huge mark, writing textbooks can solidify your status as a leading expert. But honestly, one of the most crucial and simplest tips is something you can fix right now. Use a consistent name.
Seriously, this point is so important, it gets its own slide. If you've published under different name variations, J. Smith, then John Smith, then J. A. Smith, your citations could be split across multiple profiles.
The fix is to use one fixed name and then contact databases like Scopus and ask them to merge your profiles. Don't let your hard work get lost in the data shuffle.
So, after all that, what's the bottom line? We've covered the metrics and a whole playbook of strategies. Let's boil it all down to the core takeaways for you.
Here it is in a nutshell. First, remember, author impact isn't just about how many papers you write. It's about how much they resonate. It's quantity and quality. Second, those metrics we talked about, the H-index and G-index, they just provide a language for measuring that resonance. And most importantly, this is not something that just happens to you. You have agency here. You can actively and strategically work to improve your impact.
And that leaves us with one final thought. We've talked a lot about the numbers, about the scores and the metrics, but I want you to think about this. Beyond the H-index, beyond the citations, what is making an impact really truly mean for the future of your research and for your field? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning in.